Welcome to the channel, English Epics. Not every story that begins with, "Once upon a time," ends happily. The characters don't always live happily ever after. Like in this one, it all started like a fairy tale, the kind my wife tried to tell me, but unfortunately for her, or perhaps for me, depending on how you look at it, I already knew what kind of game she was planning to play. A long time ago, we planned to get married. Eliza and I grew up together, and it was always expected, at least by our mothers, that we would marry once we were old enough. Our mothers had been best friends since elementary school. They went to college together, belonged to the same sorority, and remained very close even 30 years after graduation. First, my mother got married, and Eliza's mother was her maid of honor. Then, when Eliza's mother got married, my mother returned. The favorite Winnow was born. Eliza's mother became my godmother, and when Eliza was born, my mother became hers. The day after Eliza was born, our mothers began planning our wedding. Our family spent vacations together, celebrated holidays as one, and, practically speaking, we might as well have been one big family already. As children, Eliza and I had no idea what our mothers had in mind for us. All we knew was that we were close. It wasn't until we reached the age when boys start noticing girls and girls start watching boys that we began to understand what our mothers had been planning all along. If I started showing interest in another girl, my mother always found a way to separate us. If Eliza became interested in a boy, her mother was just as quick to shut it down. We always went to school dances together. She was my date for prom, and I was hers. The turning point came when I graduated from high school and started college. Eliza still had one more year left of high school, so essentially, we were separated, and my mother could no longer try to control my life, while hers still had influence over her. Against my mother's wishes, I chose to attend college full-time. She wanted me to live at home and commute to classes, but I wanted to live in a dorm, join a fraternity, and do all the things most college students get to experience. My mom tried to pressure me, but since I was on a scholarship, she had no financial leverage over me. Away from home and her influence, I got to know other girls for the first time. I could finally go out and do things with someone who wasn't Eliza. I dated a few girls and had a great time. I even hit the jackpot at a fraternity party and dated the girl who ended up dancing on the punch table that night. We hung out for nearly 2 months before we both decided to move on. At a party, I met the wife of one of the graduate students. She was a teaching assistant, and although I could never say for sure who seduced whom, she taught me how to please her, and then, very generously, told me that not only was I doing it, but I was actually very good at it. After that, I became quite popular. Not a single weekend went by without a date, which usually ended either in my bed or the girls. Life was good, until Eliza graduated from high school and enrolled in college. At first, I just wanted to show her around campus and introduce her to some people. She was living at home, and honestly, I didn't expect to see her much. I thought she, like me, would embrace her freedom and start dating guys, but she didn't. What she did do was cling to me. Well, maybe not cling exactly, but she was always around. For the first month or so, she just watched. Then, one day, after I'd spent the weekend with a fiery redhead, Eliza asked me, "What do you see in her?" Her IQ is about the same as a grape. From then on, it sounded like this: "Why are you wasting your time on her? She's just an adulteress," or, "I know you've got better taste than spending time with that pig." About a month later, I finally said, "Eliza, instead of attacking the women I date, why don't you go find some guys and start dating yourself?" "I'm not interested in other guys," she replied. "Why not? Did you become a lesbian?" To that, I got very offended. "Of course not. Then what's the problem?" I asked you. "Me? What's wrong with me? You've always been the only one for me. I don't want anyone else. I want to be with you." To make a long story short, our mothers ended up pulling off the wedding they had been planning since the day Eliza was born. Let's fast forward 6 years, to the day I came home early from work. I had a meeting scheduled not far from the house, and I decided to just go home afterward instead of returning to the office. It was a Friday, and I figured I'd get a head start on the weekend. As I walked through the front door, I heard the sound of water running in the shower, so I headed toward the stairs, then stopped when I noticed something. On the bottom step was a shoe, more specifically, a high-heeled pump. As I climbed the stairs, I found the second shoe on the top step. A few steps down the hallway, I saw a bra on the floor. A skirt and a pair of thong panties were lying just outside the bedroom door. But what really caught my attention inside the bedroom was the shredded bed. A box of protection on the nightstand next to a tube of, and 3 used and tied off rubbers on the floor next to the bed. My first impulse was to burst into the bathroom, drag Elisa out of the shower, pull her into the bedroom, point to the evidence, and then call her a cheating adulteress. After that, I imagined myself dragging her down the stairs and throwing her out of the house, bare-ass naked. But even as I took a few steps toward the bathroom, a quiet voice in my head urged me to back off and gather more information. I wasn't going to ask Eliza for the truth, because at that point, I no longer trusted her. She had cheated on me, so it was obvious she would lie too. I quickly and silently slipped out of the house and found a payphone. The yellow pages gave me the number of a private investigator, and I called him. He was able to meet me that same day, so I hurried down to his office and told him everything. I agreed to his fee, handed him the keys to my house, and then headed back home to arrive at my usual time, as if nothing had happened. All signs of Eliza's daytime activities had vanished, and my freshly showered wife greeted me at the door with a kiss. I know, it was foolish of me, but I was curious how Eliza would feel after having sex with someone else. I scooped her up into my arms and, carrying her toward the bedroom, said, "Tonight, I want dessert first. Dinner can wait." Once in the bedroom, I undressed and began caressing Eliza. For some reason, she didn't seem as enthusiastic as usual, so I pushed her onto the bed and climbed on top of her. The entire time, I didn't take my eyes off her face. And I thought I saw a flicker of fear. Will he notice? Some kind of fear, and then a flicker of, he suspects something, doesn't he? That last look was probably triggered by the major change in our usual routine. I always spent time caressing her before we made love, but not this time. And she had to notice that. It was meant to make her think. I was curious to see how she'd react, but there was no way I was going to make love to her right after she'd been with some other guy. She definitely felt different, but I couldn't figure out why. She had obviously taken a shower. She wasn't damp or messy, and she didn't seem relaxed either, but something had changed. What I did realize was how unhinged I had become. The image of the bedroom, clothes scattered, used protection, the bed torn apart, had ignited my imagination. What if, instead of one guy doing it with her 3 times, it had been 3 different guys each doing it once? A whole series of what-ifs rushed through my mind and excited me so much that I finished far faster than usual. That night, I had sex with Elisa 4 times. Sex, not lovemaking, just raw sex. And we never got around to dinner. On Saturday, I took Eliza out for dinner and a show, and while we were gone, the private investigator used the key I had given him to enter our house and install surveillance equipment. That night and throughout Sunday, I went after Elisa like a starving man after food. The images in my mind kept me hard almost constantly. I couldn't stop thinking about that torn-up bed and the use protection. I kept flashing back to the parties I had attended in college, and now I imagined Eliza on that bed, with 8 or 9 men standing around, waiting their turn. Oddly enough, the thought only turned me on more. I think Eliza might have been relieved to see me go back to work on Monday. That week, I had sex with Eliza every night after coming home from work, mostly to see if I could detect any signs that someone else had already been there. On Friday afternoon, I was in the detective's office, reading through his report. His name is Rod Mallory, and he's an unemployed aircraft mechanic. He comes over every day around noon and stays until about 3:30. If he's sticking to his usual schedule, he's probably there right now. I'll need you to get your wife out of the house tomorrow so I can retrieve my equipment. Then, sometime mid-week I'll have your final report ready. As I rode the elevator down from his 7th floor office, I realized I didn't feel as eager to get home as I had on Monday. It was as if knowing the name of the man sleeping with my wife had somehow turned off the desire that had been burning in my head since the day I discovered Eliza was cheating. I don't know, maybe it was because I'd been counting down the seconds all week. Though not carelessly, but I couldn't figure out exactly what had flipped the switch. Whatever the reason, the fire was out. When I got home, Eliza expected me to drag her into the bedroom, but I simply kissed her on the cheek and asked what we were having for dinner. On Saturday, I took her out for dinner and a show. We made love on Sunday, but only because Eliza initiated it, and from that point on, we never had sex unless she insisted on it. I never refused her, but I never pursued her again, either. On Wednesday, I received the full report from the detective, complete with audio and video recordings. I went home to think about the future. Watching the footage and listening to the recorded phone calls made it clear this guy, Rod, had been sleeping with Eliza for almost 6 months. I had more than enough grounds for divorce, but something was missing. I thought about it for a day or two, and then I finally realized what it was. If I had just taken what I had to a lawyer, the marriage would have been dissolved overnight, but I wanted to go out with a bang. I went online and started doing research. Over the next 2 days, I gathered everything I needed. Then, every time Eliza left the house, to go shopping or visit her mother, I worked on my project. It took me 3 weeks, but when I was done, the house was fully wired for audio and video surveillance. I had a voice-activated recorder hooked up to the phone, one in the living room and another in the bedroom. There were 2 surveillance cameras in the bedroom connected directly to a dual-deck VCR in my home office, and 1 camera in the living room feeding into a 3rd VCR. Everything was either voice-activated or motion-sensitive. The results were mixed. I ended up with more footage of Eliza vacuuming the floors, dusting, washing windows, and doing housework than of her and her lover, and the quality of that footage ranged from poor to excellent, depending on the lighting in the room at the time. I had better luck filming in the living room, since it faced south and got more natural light, but they didn't spend much time there. The bedroom windows faced north, and if the blinds were down, I couldn't capture much useful information. I had more than enough evidence to take to a divorce attorney, but most of that had already come from the private investigator. Considering the outrageous amount of money I spent on all that equipment, I was hoping for more, a lot more. However, the audio tapes turned out to be a goldmine. I found out that Rod had been pressuring Eliza to leave me and marry him. Eliza kept pushing him away. And one day, Rod said something blunt. "You need to shit or get off the pot. You either love me or you don't. You either want to be with me or you don't. But you've got to make a decision because I'm tired of sneaking around with you. I'm tired of a couple of stolen hours a day. I want evenings, weekends, holidays, the whole 9 yards. So what's it gonna be?" Eliza's answer caught my attention. "You know I want you, baby. If I didn't, you wouldn't be here. But I also want my husband. I love him, and I don't want to lose him, but I want you too. Well, we're at a crossroads, baby. Clearly, we both can't have you, especially since I'm done hiding. Couldn't you share me with him if he found out and accepted it? How exactly do you plan to pull off that little miracle? Let me think about it, sweetheart. Oh, look at the time. You've got to go." This happened on a Friday. The following Monday, Rod brought it up again, and Eliza said she had a plan. "I'm going to convince him to let me have sex with another man? Huh. I'm sure he'll jump at that opportunity." "He might not jump at it, but there's a good chance he'll agree." "You're not serious? What man would ever agree to something like that? A man who loves me and believes that I love him. No, baby, I don't see that happening. Listen, back in college, he was a cool guy. He had sex with 20 or 30 different girls, but I came to our marriage bed a virgin. I'm going to start persuading him to let me try being with another man. I'll tell him I'm curious about what I missed and ask if he'll let me satisfy that curiosity. I'll keep talking to him about it until he gives in and allows it. You'll be the other man, and we'll keep going from there. Just be patient with me, baby. Give me a little time to work this out." "All right." On Tuesday, he asked her again how she planned to pull it off. "I'm going to have sex with him until he's half dead, and when he's too exhausted to think straight, I'll pounce. I still don't get why it has to be the 2 of us. You really don't want to know?" "No, I do. Fine, you asked for it. If you make me choose between the 2 of you, I'll choose my husband. I love him, and I can't even imagine living my life without him. He has everything a girl could want in a man, and if he had what you have, he'd be absolutely perfect. So that's all I mean to you. Just a bigger size." "No, silly, I really do like you, but honestly, if it weren't for your equipment, you wouldn't be here. So, are you going to have sex with me or sulk?" Since I'd been warned in advance, I was prepared when Elisa hit me with it. We had just spent a long, exhausting night having sex, and Eliza was snuggled up next to me. "Honey, can I ask you a strange question? One that won't make you mad?" "Of course you can." "Okay, now think about it. Don't jump up or yell. No, do you love and trust me enough to let me satisfy a curiosity of mine?" "I don't know, Eliza. What are you getting at? Please don't take this the wrong way, baby. I love you to death, I really do, But I've always felt like, by staying a virgin until we got married, I missed out on something. What do you mean, Eliza? I've never had anyone but you, baby. And I've always wondered what someone else might be like. Let me get this straight. You want to sleep with another man, and you want me to say it's okay? Yes, is this your way of telling me you think I'm not good in bed? Oh God, no, baby, don't think that. Didn't the night we just had prove otherwise? No, it's just curiosity on my part. I would never leave you for someone else. Before we got married, you had plenty of girlfriends, so you got to see the differences between women, but you're the only man I've ever been with. I just wish you'd let me satisfy my curiosity. Have you already picked a guy? Maybe one of my many friends who've had a crush on you. No, sweetheart. I don't want it to be anyone we know. If you agree, I was thinking we could go to Denver, hit a cocktail bar, and see if I can find someone I like enough to get lucky. No strings attached. You get your random sex, and then we come back home and forget it ever happened. Yes, baby. Just enough to satisfy my curiosity. When do you want to do this? You'll let me. I can actually go through with it. Why not? It's not like you're sneaking around behind my back. Sure, sweetheart, go ahead. How about Friday night? On Friday, when I came home from work, Elisa was fully dressed and ready to go. In her short skirt and high heels, she looked as sexy as anyone, heading out for the night. You shouldn't have any trouble getting laid in that outfit. I hope not. If I get turned down, that'll be a serious blow to my ego. As we drove to Denver, I asked her where she wanted to go. She said she wasn't exactly sure. Just drive around, baby. When I see a place that looks like somewhere I might like, I'll let you know. When we got to Denver, I drove around the area, deliberately avoiding the rest stop where, according to the recordings, Eliza and Rod had once met. I could see Eliza getting more and more nervous as we circled the neighborhoods. She was desperate to make it all seem spontaneous, but I refused to cooperate. I'd head in the general direction she wanted, and then, just a few blocks away from the right place, I'd turn left or right and go somewhere else entirely. Eventually, I got tired of playing along and drove toward the place she was clearly aiming for. There, she said, pointing to a bar called Dino. Why here? I asked. There's a motel right across the street. When I do this, I don't want it to be a quickie in the back seat. I pulled into Dino's parking lot, and after stopping the car, I asked, Are you sure you want to do this? Yes, baby, I'm sure. I want to know what it feels like to be with someone else, and maybe I'll never have the courage to try again. Have you really thought this through? What happens if you decide you like it and want to keep doing it? Where does that leave us? What if he turns out to be a better lover than I am? What if he's bigger, and you realize you like bigger, and decide to replace me? I thought I saw a spark in her eyes when I mentioned that, but maybe it was just my imagination. Don't be silly, baby. I love you, and you know that. I'd never leave you for someone else, and you know that too. Alright, so how exactly are we going to do this? We'll go inside, get a table, I'll find someone I like, and we'll see what happens. What do you mean, see what happens? I don't know, baby. I've never done anything like this before. I guess we'll just go with the flow. If I find a guy I like, and he's into me, and doesn't mind you watching, we can go over to the motel, across the street and see where it leads. What do you mean, if I watch? I'm not planning to do that. You have to, baby. It's the only way I can go through with this. You have to be part of it. Any other way would feel like cheating on you. I don't think I can do it, Eliza. Of course you can, baby. You can do this for me. I know you can. I don't know, Eliza. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. When we walked in, I noticed Rod sitting at the end of the bar. We found an open table. I ordered drinks, and then Eliza and I danced a couple of songs together. Eliza got up to go to the restroom, and on her way back to the table, some guy stopped her and asked her to dance. Then he led her to his table and introduced her to two of his friends. All three of them ended up dancing with her. When she came back to our table, she giggled and said, "Looks like I've got at least 3 to choose from." I danced with her too, more times. And then it was my turn to go to the restroom. When I came back to the table, Rod was there, talking to Eliza. As I approached, Eliza stood up and said, "Watch my purse, honey. This nice young man just asked me to dance." I smiled and replied, "Keep it clean," and Eliza gave me a strange look as Rod led her away. This was what I had been waiting for. I took Eliza's purse, pulled out all the cash and credit cards, and then, placed the purse back on the table. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a videotape, and set it on top of her purse. It was a copy of one of her encounters with Rod, and I tied it with a pretty red ribbon and bow. I placed a card on top, then stood up and walked away. When they returned to the table and opened the card, they saw the message. Just a little something for your enjoyment as you and Rod begin your new life together. P.S. Don't bother calling me. It won't do you any good. Thank you for being with us. And if you're one of those who watches silently, just leave a like. It helps new stories come to light.